Prime Minister, thank you so much for making time for us here on Global. You're here, I'm here. You made another announcement. You've been traveling quite a bit recently. A lot of people say you're campaigning.
This is what summer looks like for a politician, to get out there and meet with people, especially after a pandemic, where we've been working really hard to support people, to have people's backs through the pandemic, and now people are expecting us to be part of building back better, and that's what we've been announcing things that we led off with in the budget a few months ago, and now we're actually being able to get out there and share with people the impacts of the big decisions we've made.
So are you not meeting with advisors, talking about an election, calling your staff back from Ottawa?
In a minority government, there's always times where we have to be ready for whatever comes, but we're focused on continuing to deliver for Canadians every step of the way.
Okay. Let's talk about the border. Big border news that the border is opening to vaccinated U.S. citizens, but Prime Minister, it's not reciprocal. And in the United States right now, we're seeing rates go up of COVID. We now have more people that are fully vaccinated here. How frustrating is that for you?
Not frustrating at all. The fact is, the decisions that every country makes is in regards to its own protection of its own citizens. And from the very beginning, we've put measures in that were not reciprocated by the United States. You can still fly down to Florida unvaccinated in the middle of the pandemic. We made sure that nobody was coming for any tourism or any non-essential purposes into Canada from the very beginning. And we kept working with the United States to align as much as possible, consistent with our own needs. We took a gradual, careful approach that is paying off. We're seeing record numbers of Canadians getting vaccinated, but there's still so much more to do. I mean, we know now, we're seeing that the people who are falling ill, the people getting hospitalized, are people who are unvaccinated. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are saying, oh, you know what, everyone else is getting vaccinated, so maybe I don't have to. That's not the right way to think. Everyone needs to get vaccinated, because people who are going to be sick and dying will mostly be unvaccinated people in the coming months, because COVID's in the world for the next few years. Even if we manage to minimize it in Canada, every loss is a tragedy. So people just need to keep getting that first dose and second dose.
And I mean, that's millions of people who are unvaccinated when we think about the number of people. Prime Minister, I want to change the tone a little bit and talk about hate. We have seen hate on the rise in so many different ways, but I want to focus right now on Islamophobia. I know you're attending a summit this week. The National Council of Canadian Muslims says since the London terror attack, there has been a violent incident against a Muslim every day, and that same group is saying that out of all the G7 countries, I mean, Muslims have faced violent attacks in this country more than any other G7 country. So I'm really curious to get your perspective. Why Canada? Why do you think that's happening here?
Well, I think, first of all, let's recognize that Canada's not immune to the forces at work around the world. We are seeing a rise of hatred, a rise of intolerance, fed in some places by populism and by politics of division, that is a global phenomenon. It fed in by misinformation, disinformation, and hatred in social media. And this is a reality around the world that Canada's not inured from. Now, we have, as a government, recognized Islamophobia from the very beginning. And actually, when Iqra Khalid put forward a motion recognizing Islamophobia, the hatred she got, not just from people around the country, but within the House of Commons as well. I mean, there are politicians who have been stoking hatred and division that we as a government have been pushing back against, not staying silent, but also taking real actions, whether it's in funding for security infrastructure for mosques, whether it's working with organized groups, whether it's standing up an anti-racism secretariat. But I agree, it's wrong that people still are afraid.
What about policy, though, Prime Minister? I mean, you represent the riding of Papineau. It's such a diverse riding, but there are people in your riding who feel like you're not standing up to for them when it comes to Bill 21, that law that bans civil servants from wearing, religious symbols. And I know that you have said that you don't agree with the law, and maybe you don't, but do you honestly feel like you're doing the best in your power to stand up for those people?
Okay, first of all, let me be very clear.
Okay.
I am opposed to that law, and everybody in Papineau, and most people across the country know that I am in total disagreement with Bill 21. I don't think it's for any government, particularly in a country that values rights and liberties, to dictate to a woman what she can and cannot wear. I think that's just wrong. However, we have a justice system that is set up so that individuals can take their governments to court if there is a law that they disagree with. And that's what many Quebecers and Quebec organizations are doing. And when you turn something that is an issue of fundamental rights into an issue of provincial versus federal disagreement, you actually elevate it and don't necessarily solve for it the way people working through the justice system, the way our Constitution is designed, the way our Federation is designed to be able to counter.
But Prime Minister, I mean, don't you think that with the rise we're seeing in Islamophobic hatred, I mean, laws convey social norms, right? So even just having that to some people legitimizes this type of Islamophobia, right?
And I am in disagreement with Bill 21.
So why not do something about it, Prime Minister?
Because the federal government isn't the dad to the provinces. The Constitution lays out areas of jurisdiction where we are watching very closely what happens. But the way our country is set up is individuals get to stand up for their rights in the courts. You don't need a different order of government to weigh in as well. You can have individuals very successfully go against a particular law that applies to them.
Let me ask you this, though. I mean, there are a lot of minority groups who feel like this law is racist. Do you think it's racist?
I think it is. I think it's the wrong thing to be doing. I do not think it goes in the right direction. But I remember in 2015 there was huge discussions I had with my Muslim friends about Stephen Harper's C-51, the law that was going at people's security. And the issue was that we promised that we were going to modify it and make it much better, which is what we did when we got into office. But we weren't going to, make it a point of conflict and disagreement that would dominate the federal election, because I didn't think that putting Muslims and Islamophobia at the center of the 2015 election was going to serve anyone in actually solving the problem. And my interest in this is to bring Canada to a place of better understanding, better respect for each other, and conflict isn't always the way to do that.
Okay, I want to play you a clip, if you don't mind, Prime Minister. It is of a woman whose name is Bibi Zafis, and her father, Mohammed Aslam Zafis, was a mosque caretaker.
Yes, he was.
You know the story?
Yes, it was just a horrible hate killing.
Right, and after her father was killed, his throat was slashed outside the mosque where he worked as a caretaker. She didn't feel safe wearing a hijab, and she asked me if I ever did interview you to play this clip. So if you don't mind
of course.
Pressing play here.
Turn up the volume.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, here, I think it's just right over here. Sorry.
The volume's up, but the mic's there you are.
Go ahead, here.
Every day of my life I have trauma because, Prime Minister, I cannot wear a hijab and walk out there. I am afraid of my mind, my family, and for me when I go down the street.
She's not the only one, Prime Minister. I've heard from so many women in hijab saying that they don't feel safe out on the street. And I've heard from so many leaders who link this bill and policies, like you said, that snitch line back in the day, but now Bill 21, to what's happening in terms of Islamophobia.
We are seeing a rise in Islamophobia right across the country. Those Edmonton women who were attacked for wearing a hijab weren't impacted by Bill 21. They're being impacted by a larger intolerance and hatred and division that is present right across Canada and present right around the world. And we are having to come together as a community to tackle this. And as much as a government can do, or any one government can do, there's something for us all to do. And that's one of the reasons why we're hosting a summit on Islamophobia this week. So we can actually take those tools, those recommendations, and bring people along, no matter how much a government chooses to do. People who carry hatred or ignorance or fear or racism in their hearts are not going to be affected by a government. What we can do is create the conditions to empower community groups, which we have, to work with the community to make sure that allies, that people who don't accept this, know to speak up, to be part of it. The amount of times I know people who've grown used to seeing, whether it's Muslim families or Sikh families wander through parks 3 generations before in beautiful traditional dress.
They don't feel comfortable.
Exactly. And to get ordinary Canadians to understand that these people, these Canadians, live in fear that we don't even see, the majority, that's something that requires us all to change.
Okay. I want to move on to residential schools, because this has been a reckoning, as you know, across Canada. But, you know, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission spent 5 years getting testimony from these survivors, and now we have these possible crime scenes in multiple provinces, yet virtually no one has been held accountable for what's happened
You said,
in these.
and now we have these crime scenes. No, those crime scenes have been there for generations, and we've known about them for generations, and Indigenous peoples have known about them for generations. And the Truth and Reconciliation Commission came out and said that these burial sites were there, and 2-3 years ago we put forward funding. We started work with them that is leading to these
What about accountability, Prime Minister? What about the criminal charges? Nobody's being charged. Would you like to see that? Would you like to see criminal accountability?
What I want to see is secondary to what the communities need. We have to remember that reconciliation is not about us deciding what the right thing is for Indigenous communities. It's putting Indigenous communities, survivors, family members at the heart of it. And there are many who are calling for accountability, and we will listen to them and we will work for them. There are others who want other ways of grieving, and we will be with them and we will support them. Whatever they want is at the center of the way we move forward.
Some have told us, though, that they want to hear you call for a criminal investigation on this. Will you call for one?
It's not up to a Prime Minister to call for a criminal investigation. We have a process with prosecutors, with police laying charges that is separate, rightly so, from politicians.
But would you support one?
Yes, absolutely. I will support anything that families need to move forward, for Canadians to understand the truth and to actually move forward on reconciliation. And this moment of awakening that we are all part of this journey of reconciliation is essential, because you have to remember that even as Indigenous kids were being told that they had no worth, they had no value in those residential schools, in every other school in Canada, kids were being told, non-Indigenous kids were being told, that Indigenous communities had no worth, had no value. So reconciliation isn't just about Indigenous people and the government.
Right.
It's about all of us, and we all have a role to play.
I want to talk to you about a story that 6 months ago Global News broke this story about sexual misconduct allegations in the Canadian military, as you know. You are now in an unprecedented situation, Prime Minister, where you have a former Chief of Defence Staff who's facing criminal charges of obstruction of justice. This entire time you have kept your Defence Minister, even though he was warned about allegations in 2018 of misconduct. And, you know, we've talked to dozens of survivors, and they really don't understand why, when they allege that that the minister is someone who didn't listen and didn't take action then. What is that decision, if you keeping your minister, say to these victims?
Well, first of all, I can understand how much hurt and how much pain and anguish people who chose to serve their country and instead got mistreated, got stuck in a culture of intolerance, of misogyny, a culture that is toxic in too many parts of our Canadian military. This is a real issue that is being reckoned with, and quite frankly that we took steps on a number of years ago, but we need to continue to take steps on. In regards to the minister, he is someone who his entire career has stood against the old boys network of the military, has been there to fight for better inclusion, for better diversity, for standing up for people in everything he's done. So I can understand the pushback that he's getting from all sides, from people who don't feel he's done enough and people who think he's doing too much at the same time.
But yet he didn't come to you. I mean, he told your Chief of Staff. Your staff knew, the minister knew. I mean, are you angry that you didn't know about these allegations?
No, the minister actually consulted with the experts, consulted with the Privy Council office to make sure that he was taking every step necessary. It's not up to politicians to investigate allegations of misconduct. It's up to us to make sure they get investigated by the right processes, and that's what he did. He directed the ombudsman to go forward to the proper authorities, and then the ombudsman was unable to give the information. There wasn't able to be an investigation, but it wasn't up to the minister to conclude or to investigate himself. He took every step appropriately. And I know this is a terrible situation, and every single person who serves in our armed forces deserves to be treated with respect. Absolutely. I believe that. The minister believes that. Canadians believe that. At the same time, he took the steps necessary. So when the media latches onto this, as you are,
it's not the media. It's the victims. It's the alleged victims that are saying this to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
The victims and survivors have been very clear, and we are working with them, But when you say things like, "Why didn't the minister tell you?" and then you say you can't even tell me what the minister said because the minister didn't know things, you're actually sharing half of the story. And I think what's really important right now is that we trust in the processes that exist, that we strengthen the processes as we have over a couple of years ago and as we're continuing to now, and that we not look to politicize this situation, which unfortunately some people are doing. Nobody who puts up their hand to serve their country deserves to be in a culture that has been proven to be not up to actually protecting and respecting them.
Okay. I'm going to just quickly come back to my first question, which is about the election. Is it safe to say that we're not gonna have an election? We shouldn't think about you
We are
calling...
going to continue to work in the best way we can to protect Canadians and to support them. We've come through a very difficult year.
Right.
We're now launching a rebuild of our economy where there are very different views from different parties. The Conservatives think we spent too much. The NDP, I'm not quite sure what they're thinking on every given day. We are looking at how to best help Canadians, and that's what we'll stay focused on.
And do you think you get a majority when you do ask Canadians for a mandate?
I am going to continue to govern every single day with the best interests of Canadians at heart.
Okay. Prime Minister, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure, Farah.